emerging markets and developed markets are behaving quite similar in the way that they've got in most cases, a coordinated fiscal and monetary approach taking place. And that's what's really needed at the moment because, as you say, this is an unprecedented shock to the global economy, and it's an unprecedented shock to many economies throughout the region in Asia. So what we're seeing is in Indonesia, for example, we're seeing quite significant fiscal spending and monetary policy, working hand in hand to try and cushion the blow. And what I would note is that while they can help cushion the blow, they can't overwhelm the economic toll of COVID-19 because, the government's introducing quite significant measures that are trying to contain the localized outbreak. And while you're trying to contain the localized outbreak, that's suppressing demand. And so while you're supporting those people who have lost their jobs to an extent, it's not actually, taking the place or overwhelming the impact of that suppressed demand that's been implemented. So at the moment, it's really what we're seeing, particularly in Indonesia and elsewhere in Asia, is that the government's prioritizing trying to contain the further spread of the virus over the economic toll of what the suppression measures mean. And so as long as the health impacts are mitigated, and when the health impacts become mitigated, that's when we can focus on an economic recovery.
We've been wondering about this, ensuring that the fiscal and monetary policy can go hand in hand. What kind of major or big progress has been made by emerging countries on your perspective so far?
Mm-hmm. So we have noticed that, particularly in Asia, there is, generally speaking, a decent amount of fiscal and monetary space to support, the economic toll that COVID-19 is bringing, and particularly in Indonesia, with the government increasing the fiscal deficit allowance, that means that there is more fiscal space and there is more room to cushion the blow as further economic adverse impacts really materialize. And that's important. And we're also seeing, for example, Bank Indonesia, it's taking a measured and targeted approach to releasing monetary stimulus. So given that the rupiah has been, a source of concern, and Bank Indonesia does have broader concerns over external stability, we saw in April that they held off cutting the policy rate, but they did make other measures to kind of continue to support businesses, banks that are facing liquidity constraints. So we saw reserve requirement ratios being cut, and that was important. Whereas, and going forward, given that the rupiah is looking a little bit more stable, and it has, somewhat, appreciated actually since April, that means that Bank Indonesia does have a little bit more policy space to reduce rates further, which is also important.